Year 11 Bio students. Let's talk about the fluid mosaic model of the cell membrane. Before we get into it, remember that a model is a representation of a complex structure or process, which describes, simplifies, or explains the concept to aid understanding. In other words, models are used in science to help simplify and understand difficult concepts. And in this case, our model is the fluid mosaic model, which explains the structure and function of the cell membrane. Now for starters, the cell membrane is in some ways like a security guard for the cell. It protects the cell and controls what goes in and out. And if we get a bit more specific, the fluid mosaic model, as mentioned by the NASA syllabus, has two key words: fluid and mosaic. Let's talk about the fluid part first. This doesn't mean it's a liquid, but it is flexible. The key structure which allows for this fluidity is the phospholipid bilayer. Let's break that down. Bilayer implies there are two layers of phospholipids. And phospholipids are essentially small molecules made up of a polar phosphate head and two fatty acid tails. The phosphate head is a polar molecule, just like water. This means it loves water or is hydrophilic. The lipid tails are non-polar, like oil. This means they avoid water or are hydrophobic. Since cells are full of cytoplasm, which is primarily water, the phosphate heads will face the watery environment. Because remember, the phosphate head loves water. And the lipid tails, which hate water, will try and avoid the water at all costs. And they do this by doing something really smart. They face each other. This creates a symmetrical bilayer, which essentially means that the polar heads, the water-loving parts of the molecule, are the only ones facing the watery environment of the cytoplasm. This unique structure is very flexible, acting like a fluid, but it stays together to control what enters and exits the cell. Imagine a pool of water covered in floating balls. The balls will float and move as the water moves. However, it can also move apart to let objects enter the water. Now let's look at the mosaic part. Picture a mosaic on the wall. What do you see? Lots of tiles with different colors and sizes. In the same way, the cell membrane has many added molecules and proteins. This creates a mosaic on the surface of the cell and allows unique forms of cellular transport. These tiles can be sorted into three main groups. Number one, proteins. These are the workers in the membrane. Some act as channels to allow specific molecules through. Others act as pumps, using energy to move molecules against the concentration gradient. Other proteins are receptors. They receive signals like hormones from outside the cell and communicate them to the inside contents of the cell. The second group are cholesterols. Cholesterols are lipids, aka fats, which are scattered throughout the phospholipid bilayer and keep the cell membrane intact, while also making sure it's flexible. And finally, the third group, carbohydrates. These are like ID tags for cells. They help cells recognize each other, and the immune system relies on these ID tags to recognize self versus invader cells. And together, these molecules form a beautiful and complex mosaic on the surface of each cell. And there you have it. This is the fluid mosaic model of the cell membrane.